That's 5 years of the lock in every year.
Okay. Never happy.
Can't satisfy some people. You can't satisfy some people.
I'm curious. Sure.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our budget meeting this evening. It is 6 o'clock. We'll get started. Disclosure of pecuniary interest, if anyone has any. I don't see any. If you do, please forward it to the clerk in writing. And also, I would do roll call. Everyone is here. So I think we'll get started, and we are going to start. Our treasurer is going to do a slide, about 20 slides to do an overview of the budget. And then after that, we will, when we get into department reports, we'll ask our questions. We'll have our discussions at that time. So Estelle, if you're ready to go.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, members of council. So the purpose of tonight's meeting, as you all know, is our 2022 budget deliberation meeting, where you get the opportunity to ask any questions that you may have following the review that you've done of your budget binders. So the way things are going to be rolling out tonight, the agenda for the meeting, I will first go over the questions that have been submitted by different members of council and what the answers are, so all members of council have the same information. Then we're going to look at a few slight changes that we've made to the proposed budget since we presented back on January 19th and give you the details of those changes. Then we're going to look at items for consideration of council tonight, just so you know where we're going to be, what we're going to be looking for when we do go through the different department budgets. Then we're going to go over a quick recap of recent presentations that you have had since the budget was presented to you for information that will guide you in the decisions that you'll be making tonight. We're going to look at our reserve and reserve funds balances, and then we're going to look at the cost to an average household in regards to the increases that have been included in this proposed budget. Then we will go into the operating budget department by department. We're not going to do a line by line review. We're just going to go to that department and we're going to open the floor to questions that you may have following your review for each department. And then we'll go to the capital projects. Okay, so the first item is questions that I have received from different members of council since the budget presentation. So the first question is the increase in user fees for recycling included in the proposed 2% increase, or is it added to the 2%? So the increase in the bin rate is not included in the 2%. It is, however, included as additional revenue within the waste department. The next question is, are proceeds from the Hydro Reserve Fund being utilized for the dugout bench covers in the Ailsa Craig and Park Hill Ball Diamonds? So this project, as it includes areas other than Park Hill, its funding solely comes from the working capital reserves and not from the proceeds of the hydro. And since I've prepared the slides, I have received additional questions that I will just verbally tell you what they are. So wages in administration, Service Ontario, and recreation departments have substantial increases. Is this because of added staff or reallocation of wages? So for the admin department, it is an additional position due to the deputy clerk, so for the retirement and the succession planning. In Service Ontario, the increase is due to the possible union negotiations that will be happening in July. We don't know what the rate is. And then for the recreation department, there has been an adjustment for one employee to proper job rate, and the rest of it is a reallocation of wages. So it is a combination for the Recreation Department. The next question, also in Department 3112, there is no amount for gravel purchases. So if we use the 875,000 that was discussed at the last meeting, that would be an increase of 80%. You're correct, it is not, the 875,000 is not in the operating budget. That's what was moved over to the capital budgets for the Rolling Road Rehab project. And the final question, Council Department, in donation and support, the budget of 48,000. Last year's actuals was 2,217. Is this the community grant program? Yes, it has been in the past, along with other donations, such as donations to the Legion, to the Thames Valley Education Fund, the Morodo Athletics, pardon my accent, Marauders at the high school. In 2019, there was a budget of 100,000 with an actual expense of 112,000. In 2020, there was a budget of 163,000 with an actual of 2,655. And in 2021, there was a budget of 48,000 with an actual of 3,350. So again, keep in mind that 2020 and 2021 COVID related. Is this why the actuals weren't as high as previous years? It may as well be. So that is the extent of the questions that I have received from council members. Moving on to the modifications that were made to the budget following the January 19th presentation. Since then, we've received information from our group benefits supplier that we will be having a 6.9% increase to our group benefits. So that is a total additional expense of $23,719, and it has affected all departments. There has been in this modification the creation of a lead hand position in the operations department. This is not a new full-time employee, but a reassignment from operator one to lead hand. So the total increase to expenses for the operations department is $10,575. And the last modification to the proposed budget is within the water department. I have included additional expenses for the interest for the loans. The first loan being the loan for the pipeline, and the second loan being the Infrastructure Ontario loan for the Elsa Craig Water Tower, which will be finalized in 2022. And the total additional expense for the water department is $58,000. So those are the three modifications that are not included in your parent budget binders. So the next topic for discussion is items that council will be considering tonight within the different departments of your 2022 budget. So just to recap, including the meter core presentation by Jonathan Latman at the last council meeting, you were given 4 options to consider in regards to that capital project. The 4 options are listed here. I will not go into detail. We can refer to it later on when we are discussing the water department, or actually this is a capital project. Going hand in hand with that project, I've included for your information, in 2021, we've done the calculation for the amount of revenue that, and I'm just going to use quotation marks, was lost in regards to the water consumption, in regards to possible leakage or meters malfunctioning in 2021. So looking at the table in front of you, the total cubic meters purchased from the City of London is 1,430,000. And from our billings for 2021, we've billed a consumption of 746,000 cubic meters. So that means that there is 683,000 cubic meters unaccounted for. And that represents at the cost of 50.4 cents per cubic meter that we pay the City of London, it's lost revenue of $344,000. Just information for you to keep in mind when we discuss the budgets, both operating and capital budgets. The next item to keep in mind, where we will need direction as to what council decides to do, is the proposed increase for the garbage bin. So the small bin goes from 95 to 185 for the year. The medium bin will go from 150 to 294, and the large bin will go from 210 to 411. And that is basically to make the waste management department revenue neutral, self-sustaining. The next item tonight that will be discussed is we brought a report to council in regards to an amount owing for the pipeline that was installed. We have had a meeting with the City of London and the staff from Lake Huron Primary Water Supply this week, and an agreement is being prepared to enter into an agreement with Lake Huron Primary Water Supply, or with the City of London, to repay this loan. I'm sorry. And the agreement will be, the repayment will be based on a 10-year fixed term at 2.69% interest rate, with semi-annual payments beginning in July of 2022. So basically in 2022, we will have one payment towards the repayment of the loan. The next items are, again, for your consideration, is a listing of all of the proposed capital projects in your binders. We will be going, when it gets time to look at the capital projects, we will be going down the list one by one and looking for direction from council whether we are going to proceed with the project or not. Next is a small recap of two presentations that were made to council recently in regards to different items. The first one is the presentation from Watson and Associates in regards to the rate study. Within that study, Watson did indicate that our future capital expenditures for growth and or non-growth in the next future, well, in the next 10 years, I think it was, will add up to $73 million. Whether or not council decides to proceed with all of those projects will be up to council at the time, but this is just an indication of what's coming down the pipes. And for council to keep that in mind, so it's an indication to council to keep this in mind when making your decisions later on tonight. Of those $73 million capital projects, Watson's study also indicated that there will be major financing required in order to proceed with these projects. So debt incurred by the municipality if we want to maintain the infrastructure that we have in place. They are recommending total debt financing of $41 million within the next 10 years in order to be able to proceed with these projects. Now keep in mind, and that brings me to the next slide, all of this is also with a 25% water wastewater rate increase this year 15% next year, 10%, 10, 6, 2, 2, and 2 for the next 10 years. Again, information to keep in mind throughout the discussions tonight. Within the budget, though, I really do want to indicate that we did include a 5% rate increase for water, wastewater in this budget. The next slide is just again indicating the 25, 15, 10 rate increases within the next years as per the Watson rate study. The following table is I've outlined for you the amount of revenue coming in and the amount of transfers going to reserves for a 5, 7, 10, 15, 20, and 25 rate increase for your information. So if I just look at the 5%, which is what's included in the budget, total revenue for water is 3.394 million, and for wastewater is 1.855. And then I'll jump all the way down to the 25% is for the water, a total revenue of 4,040,000, and for wastewater, 2,200,000. Again, information to keep in mind. The next presentation that I want to recap and have a quick discussion or presentation on is for the asset management plan from Public Sector Digest. Within their presentation, they indicated a forecasted capital requirements, an annual amount of $6.6 million, and that includes all core infrastructure. With that annual requirement, they also show that in regards to the funding that's available for this capital investment, there is a shortfall or a deficit of an annual amount of $3,293,000. Again, information to keep in mind. So the next slides are your balances if we proceed with everything that is within the proposed budget. The balances of your reserve and reserve funds at the end of the year. I just want to draw your attention to the bottom half of the first slide, the water reserve. We have an opening balance in 2022, and bear in mind, this is unaudited, so the auditors haven't been here yet for the year end of 2021, is 1.9 million. We will be utilizing 2.5 million from reserves if we proceed with the capital projects that have been indicated in the proposed budget. So we will end the year with a deficit of $578,000 within the water reserve. And the next slide is your reserve funds. And that's where you will see that the hydro proceeds are not being utilized whatsoever in 2022. The next few slides, the first one is an indication to you as to what the 2% tax rate increase that is included in the budget would represent for an average home within the municipality. And this average home has an assessment of $231,558. So you will see that the annual increase to this property's taxes is $37, which represents a $3.08 monthly amount or 10 cents daily amount. That is for property taxes. In regards to the water wastewater rate, so an increase of 5% as recommended by the budget committee is equal to an increase of $88. This is for your average home that has an annual consumption of 180 cubic meters. So the annual amount would be $88, the monthly amount $7.34. and the daily amount is a quarter. Moving on to the garbage bin, the increase would be for the small bin, which is the vast majority of residents have the small bin. So it's an increase of $90 annual, which represents $7.50 monthly, or again, a quarter daily. And the last slide puts it all together, where you see the $37 increase for property taxes, the $88 for water, wastewater, and the $90 for the garbage bin, for a total of $215 annually, $17.92 monthly, and 60 cents daily. So that's the end of the presentation. So at this point, we're going to go to the operating budget, and we are going to start going department by department. And here is your opportunity to ask any questions that you may have following your review of the binder. So we'll start with the administration and finance tab. I will open the floor to questions.
Questions?
I'm sorry? Your administration and finance tab. So it'll be the first page. Yep, it'll be the first page of your admin and finance. So I will now open the floor for questions.
Still, what, our garbage and recycling is under what department?
That is with operations.
Operations.
Yes.
That's what I wanted to- Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. So I noticed in going through this budget proposal that there's a suggestion or a recommendation for a full-time communications officer. Where would I find that budget line?
That will be under economic development. So under your economic development and planning tab. So the bluish purple tab.
Okay.
Go ahead.
If you would recall that we've had a recurring co-op, or we've had funds set aside for a co-op student in the last couple of years to take on that role part-time. So we're increasing the budget allocation for a full-time complement on a one-year contract, so that we can come back to council to see if the communications coordinator next year would be something we entertain at a full-time basis.
Is this the time to discuss that, or should we wait till we get back to later in the budget line?
Let's wait until we're in the economic development.
When we get to the economic development, yes. Councillor Moyer.
In the, one of the other current taxes and factors, the actual. Is that because they were put on hold during COVID?
Through your worship, that is correct.
Other questions on administration?
If I may add,
Yeah, go
when
ahead.
you ask a question, please, just so everybody can follow, can you either quote the account number, which is on the first column of that line, or the page number, just so that everybody can follow.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. So 1201-1022, salaries and wages, part-time contract students. Which students would they be if we're eliminating the proposed communications contract?
This is the co-op that we have in the clerk's department for
Yeah, I'm sorry, in the
in the
what?
clerk's department for Laserfish.
Okay, all right.
Other questions for administration? You just want a couple more minutes for that before we move on? Like, I'm not trying to rush anybody. Just let me know when you're comfortable with that. Councillor Moyer.
On page 3, 120130, professional audit, and also 120140, contractor services.
Through your worship, The professional audit is our accounting audit done on a yearly basis. And the contracted services, Jonathan, if you can,
Through your worship, that could range from many expertise coming in here to do other work. It's what page is on again?
page 3. I believe it is for a job evaluation, a job organization evaluation that you brought forward, Jonathan.
Yeah, yes. So that is for a quick organizational review, just to
Yes.
review our structure as we go into next year. And that would come back to council for tendering and so on and so forth. It was not, but we've also had a significant amount of change in the last 2 years.
So it's like $2,900, $23,000. So it's quite a jump.
Anything further on that, Councillor Moyer? Are you, okay, just. I believe we did ask that question at the committee as well. Deputy Mayor Canelson.
Thank you, Mayor Rob. On to page 4, 1201-8001, transfer to capital is significantly lower than has historically been. We're going from almost $1 million down to 16,000.
If you remember at the start of the budget presentation, I indicated that was one of the changes that was incorporated. Previously, the transfers to capital was all indicated within the administration department. And in this year, it has been divided according to the department that it should belong to. This 992,000 in 2021 was basically all water related.
Okay, and I don't remember, that's why I asked.
That's okay.
And we had, there's a few spots where you'll see that in the budget. I'm sure you've seen it in your binders where there's changes in the way it's been accounted for. And it's good to ask those questions if you're not sure what the changes. Councillor Moyer and then the deputy mayor.
In on page 4, 1204, and salary and wages, we talked about this service here, about new negotiations with the union, but that's double the salary from 21.
No, this, okay, so what you're looking at, the 21,000, those were the actual expenses to November 17th. The actual budget is the previous column at 42,000. So that was the budget for 2021. And the reason it's that much lower is because due to COVID, Service Ontario was closed for a while. Yes.
Just a reminder, yeah, use your mics, please, when you ask questions. Go ahead.
Thank
Deputy
you, Mayor Rob. The question I have, and this is something I've encountered over the number of years I've been here, and it seems that every year things are being transferred from one budget line to another budget line. And for me, I don't know for the rest of the council, but for me, it's a little bit confusing. And I guess I'm trying to understand the rationale for moving things around. You know, like for example, the transfer to capital, which makes sense in some respects, but going through the whole budget proposal here, a number of things have changed from last year and the year before, the year before. Every year there seems to be different things that are directed in a different direction. Can you help me understand the rationale for that?
Probably the easiest explanation for that is it all depends on who's sitting in the treasurer's chair at the time.
That's what I thought.
It's a different way of working.
Okay.
And that is the straightforward answer to it. That's it. And it is how you're able to see what the cost for each department to get a better handle on that. Okay. Other questions? Councillor Dickel?
Page 6, 3017 advertising. It seems to be like from $2,000 to $5,000. I would have thought we did more advertising with the COVID than, it just seems like quite a jump to me.
I have my notes. Bear with me for a second here. Maybe I don't. Oh, yes. I don't have any notes for that. I believe, again, Jonathan, correct me if I'm wrong, it was for additional advertising.
Through your worship, we've taken on some more standard advertisement that we've kind of turned away from in previous years, and mainly in local papers. And we thought it was warranted to bolster up a little bit more, considering the projects that will be coming through in terms of notifying the public as well. We did take a pause for the last couple of years because we were trying to go with the trend as it would be as we transitioned over to more IT resources. But then, sometimes we've got to take a deep breath and say, maybe we're forgetting a segment of the population. So this is mainly for publication within standard media.
And also, if you look at the 2021 actuals, we were up to 4,500. So it is to better reflect the actuals. Yes. Yep.
And because of COVID, that's why we did go back a little farther. Estelle went back a little farther to try to get back to what was more normal, if you want to say. Deputy Mayor and then Councilor Moyer again.
Thank you.
And
Under
then-
administration on page 6 again, 1201. I see that there's a 99% increase from a historic 1.5, 1.2, 1.8 to 3 million and change. What's that?
It is, through your worship, it is a different way of working. You will notice that there is a transfer to reserves on page, I think it's on page 3.
Page 4.
Page 4 of 2.4 million. And that is the excess going to the capital, the working capital reserve.
What, under administration?
Because it is the bottom line for all non-self-sustaining cost centers. So it's not, there is no transfer in here for water or wastewater. This is all for the other departments within the municipality. Because taxation is part of administration and finance, it really does belong in administration and finance.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Moyer and then Councilor McClinchy.
That's similar to the question I was going to ask, was those transfer, those reserve funds can be directed to any department.
Absolutely.
in the administration.
Absolutely, it's going to the working capital reserve. So
Okay.
for all departments.
Councilor McClinchy.
Okay, 1205-4005 Contracted Services. The budget for 2021 was 35,000. The actual was 9,921 and proposed for 25,000. What does that all entail? Is that this building or the
This is the human resources budget.
or contracted
So if you look,
services?
yeah, if you look on the previous page, it's Department 1205 is human resources.
Oh, okay. So still didn't answer my question, but what does that entail? Human resources, what's all involved with that?
That is, I'm gonna say Donna's department in regards to recruiting, in regards to the contracted services. Actually, for this one is going to be possible legal fees for the negotiations for the union contract, because that's coming up in this year, in 2022.
Is it every so many years?
Through your worship, our collective agreement expires traditionally on a 3-year cycle.
Okay.
So in any given council has the opportunity to go through it. If we go to a 4-year, sometimes it'll come a little off cycle, and a 5 would leave one council without the decision. So we've opted for a 3-year renewal. That's to say we may or may not use that total funds, but we do need to have something allocated.
Would that also include money towards hiring for training? Or is that's a separate line?
I believe that's a separate line in the HR department.
Would that be legal advice as well?
That would include legal advice. In any organization, we do have to seek outside consultation occasionally, and that would include some costs.
Okay, other questions? Councilor Hemming?
Yeah, so on that same topic, the very next line down, 4012, we're going from, it was 20 and then it was 5. And now we're going back up to 30 again. So you are, that's because you're anticipating. Okay.
Correct.
Counselor Moyer?
Just going back to the transfer funds again, how did we come up with that dollar amount?
The 2.4 million.
Yes.
That is at the end of the day. So in your summary tab, you will notice the funds requirement includes that transfer. But what I did not include anything for the transfer to reserves. I looked at what the total revenue would be with the 2% increase. And then I deducted all of the expenses for the different departments. And the difference is the amount that's being transferred to reserves. So it's basically revenue minus expenses.
So that is taking in this budget with the 2% increase, that would be the money. So
Correct.
Okay. Other questions on admin? Counselor Hammond?
So on, yeah, page 6 again, the 1,000 grant, we see that's continually going down every year as we expected. So that money that you have in the parentheses there, that gets applied directly to the expenses here, is it?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And actually, if you will look on page 1 of administration and finance, it's the very top line.
Any more questions for admin? Counselor Moyer?
I guess if there was any flex in this administration, it would be in the reserve funds. That
Through your worship, if there were any adjustments made to any department of a reduction in expenses, in budgeted expenses, the transfer to reserves amount would be adjusted accordingly. Yes.
I want to make sure everyone in council is, is comfortable before we move on to the next department. I mean, a good wholesome conversation with questions is what we're looking for, right? We want to be, this is our chance to look at it. Councilor McClinchy.
Okay, Department 1202, election expenses. What is up to council to decide how that's going to be conducted? Like the last time was there going to be places that they go vote, or is it all going to be online?
Through your worship. So it's the same voting platform that we've used for the last 2 elections. So people have the option of using their telephone, a device. We also will have a voter help center set up in our building with computers that if somebody needs assistance getting on there, we're available to help with that.
Okay. And I think if council, we remember that instead of being an expense on election year, it was $5,000, I believe, put aside each year just so that we budget that.
It shows that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Other questions on admin? Seeing none, are we ready to move on to the next department? Is everyone good with that? All right. Perfect.
Thank you. We will now move to protective services, which is your red tab in your binder.
All right. We'll give everybody a minute and then we'll ask for questions. Councillor McClinchy.
In the, like, 2101, right, 2101, 402, and 2101, 404. So is it annually we transfer money to Middlesex Center, Luke and Medall? How does that work?
Through your worship, the Lucan Bedolf is a contract for service. Lucan covers part of the northeast portion of our area.
Okay,
The transfer to Middlesex Center is the fire prevention program expenses. So that's the budgeted amount, but that's not a flat fee. That's billed to us.
oh, okay, so it's based on whatever services, is that what you're saying? Okay, thanks.
Questions? Deputy Mayor Nelson?
Thank you, Mayor. 2102, 1010 on page 1, salaries and wages. I understand that last year because of COVID, there was a significant decrease down to 75,000. But the 295,000 versus the 277 and 257, 194 in previous years is a fairly significant increase. How do you account for that?
I can take that one.
Yes.
Okay, so first of all, the 75,000 expense, again, it's to November 17th. That does not include the payment to the volunteer firefighters, which is done at the end of November.
Right.
So the actual expense is actually much closer to the budgeted amount. So the increase from the 277 to the 295 is previously there was no amount budgeted for the deputy chief. We have now budgeted 8 hours per pay period for the entire year. So that is equal to about $16,000. And then there was the standard 2% increase for the volunteer firefighters that was applied across the board for the non-union staff.
So just so I understand, the 8 hours per pay period, is that every 2 weeks? Is that bi-weekly?
Correct.
Okay.
Other questions?
A follow-up question on
Go ahead.
2103, 3008, education and training. Again, I see it's fairly consistent. Now, was a decrease last year attributed to the COVID and the inability for people to participate, or is that then we're going back to the original budget?
Correct.
Okay. One question I do have for Chief Vandenhoed, with me. Where do you account for the dress uniforms in this budget proposal? The dress uniforms, where are they accounted for?
I believe those come out of equipment purchases, non-capital, 2103, 3035.
2103,
3035.
Towards the bottom of the page.
I see it, I see it, I see it. What amount would go towards dress uniforms on an annual basis?
Depends on the number that we've hired. Dress uniform costs approximately $600 per person, and after they've completed their probation and all their training, if they've made it through that, then they're entitled to the dress uniform. So it depends on how many are successful and how many we retain.
Is that a requirement to be on the fire department? Or is it a fringe benefit?
I wouldn't classify it as a fringe benefit. I would classify it as providing equipment to somebody who's volunteering their time for municipality.
So just to help me understand, this equipment what would that accomplish, this equipment in terms of protective services? In terms of keeping the firefighters safe or providing a service to the municipality? How does the taxpayer benefit from that cost?
The benefit is to the firefighter who is part of an organization representing the municipality. And when they come to an event like we had in December, and we're honoring people for the time that they have spent, they're able to dress in the uniform of the fire service of the municipality that they've been serving for 5, 10, 45 years.
Okay, so, so is there a duration of time that they need to be part of the fire department before this is awarded, or comes that immediately in the first year?
It's generally 3 years after they've completed their process of working their way through the classification system. Start off as a recruit firefighter, then they spend a period of time as a second class firefighter, and then after they've achieved milestones in training and put in their time, then they become a first class firefighter, and that's what they're.
Okay. So at the end of the day, it is kind of a fringe benefit. It's not a requirement to perform their duties.
No, it's not a requirement, but it would
Okay.
say it was part of
Okay.
their compensation.
Okay, yeah, thank you. And I think that's a conversation that if there was to be more conversation at a committee level, maybe at the fire committee level or something. But all right, so we'll just move on from that. Other questions for Councillor Keel?
Thank you, Mayor Rupp. Chief Van I just want to go back to Department 2101-4004, transfer to Middlesex Center. And that $30,000, if I remember correctly, was for fire prevention.
That's correct.
So if we move forward to 2103-3006, fire prevention program expenses, is that a duplication or?
No, those fire prevention expenses would be related to the open house that we hold around Fire Prevention Week in October, and the materials that we bring out to the schools as we do our school visits around fire prevention.
So the 30,000 transferred to Middlesex Center doesn't incorporate any of that?
That is strictly the money that is paid to Middlesex Center for inspections, re-inspections, fire investigations.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Other questions? Don't see any hands right now, so just I'm going to ask you, Greg, or Chief Vandenhoeven. Do you think there's savings to be had if we, in general, as a county, could buy some of these, for example, bunker gear? If we could buy these in a more mass quantity, like whereas, the Middlesex County, everybody says we need 12 sets this year, we need this. Do you think there's savings if we changed some of our procurement and improved it?
My understanding is there's been discussions of that by previous administrations, and you have to buy in a quantity beyond what even the county-wide we would buy in order to.
At least in the bunker gear and that type of thing? Okay. I just asked because, yeah, there is conversation with that, but I think one of the key things, if we could have some savings across the county on fireware, fire equipment, that type of thing. That was just a general question. Thank you. Other questions from council? I was just mentioned, I was told here this afternoon that they're hoping to start digging the end of March, right around the end of March, correct? For the fire hall and ambulance station.
Well, I'm pleased to hear that because I've gotten a lot of comments as to why we tore it down so quickly to inconvenience the works department.
Okay, yeah, but I just wanted people to understand. Okay. Councillor Nickel.
Yeah, 3029 on page 2. Vehicle repairs for the Ellis Creek tanker. That is a very significant jump.
This is an increase of $7,000. Actually, Councillor Keogh brought that to council at the end of the year last year, that a proposal was brought to the fire committee to do some improvements to the Elsa Craig tanker.
I don't remember it being that high. Was it that high?
Go ahead.
Through Mayor Rupp, yes. Councillor Nickel, I think it was about $7,500, and that was for the air-assisted waste or dump gate.
Yeah, I
For that
remember what
water
it was for,
tanker.
but I didn't think
It was,
that
yeah,
high.
it was, we recorded, I think, 7,200 and budgeted 75, just.
Okay, thank you. I just didn't think it was that high. Thanks.
Good to get clarification on that, though. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Other questions? I was wondering, do you think we'll get any rebates if any of our OPP officers have to go to Ottawa? You think we'll get a rebate from the,
Or Sarnia. or
just
Windsor?
asking, or Sarnia or anywhere else? Yeah.
Might be a convoy in Park Hill. You never know. We might need him here.
There might be, you never know. You never know. Yeah. I'm not making light of it. I'm just, I know that they have got resources from a lot of different places. And I know London, City of London has sent officers to other places. Other questions for,
Are we moving on to different departments or we're still protective services?
we're on protective services still.
So anything in protective
Yes,
services? Because
yes.
policing is pretty much straightforward, is it not?
Yeah, we get a bill and we pay it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So then going on to page 4, 21501010 salaries and wages. And I just refresh my memory. I understand that it's not been in place for health and safety measures. Do we still have a health and safety program? And if so, where is that budget line?
Through your worship, I would say that we've never been in health and safety. We've just evolved through the allocation of responsibility to managers within each department. Ed Jolliffe has actually kind of spearheaded some lead recently in terms of our health and safety initiatives. Costing allocations related to this and why it's kind of wiped out, it's been either allocated to separate departments or housed centralized in the HR department now. So that's been the change a little bit, but we are not abandoning health and safety. In fact, I'd say that the program that we're about to implement will bring us very close to where we need to be in terms of industry standard, but there's a long way to go as well.
Well, I thought we had a health and safety program a few years ago with the previous fire chief.
Are you meaning in the sense of responsibility or actually the program in terms of training?
The programming, I thought it was developed at that time.
So we have to do a little bit of refinement. There has been some questions about the scale of North Middlesex, the allocation of staff in certain departments and certain physical spaces and location and what that means. And you may recall at one point we thought about leaving the joint health and safety board structure. We're going back to that just to make sure we have due diligence in place.
Thank you.
I will say, Deputy Mayor, that I heard senior managers met today and a good conversation on health and safety and programs going forward. So it was good to hear.
It is. Thank you.
More questions? Councillor Moyer, you've been very quiet on this department. No, I wasn't picking his light. Your light was on. That's why I was.
Yeah. Well, they're all single digit percentages.
I will say, when we go through these departments, if there's a question that comes to you after on another department, we certainly will go back to it. Once we've gone through the departments, we can come back. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. I've now moved on to the building department. And I know it's contractor services. Does that explain why there's nothing in salaries and wages line in that?
That's correct.
Okay. Does the contractor services, the building permits cover the cost of contractor services? I believe it does, if I remember correctly.
Through your worship, we're obligated to do that under the Ontario Building Code to be as cost neutral as possible. As I've indicated previously, in March, you will be considering a fees and charges update to include an update to our structure. It has some minor changes, but it's more to housekeeping. But we are to be cost neutral as much as possible. The one thing we are proposing is a 10% bank allocation based off of what we have in the docket in terms of building permits, so that we can set aside some funds just in case if there's a depression and we can carry a staff member or a contracted service through. So that will be coming forward in March.
And just to refresh my memory, the contractor services, is it a set amount or is it based on the amount of permits issued?
Right now, it's a one-to-one relationship that when we're billed, what we've had to go through with Discovery with Middlesex Center is the projection of large-scale files coming online for North Middlesex specifically. So we've had to move ahead a little bit and increase the budget of allocation. So that's why you're seeing it go up. But if we don't take it, it won't be drawn upon that. We are talking about a little bit of reform in terms of Middlesex Center services, but it will be closely linked and monitored to a one-to-one relationship.
Thank you.
If I may, Worship, Just in regards to the transfer to reserves that you see on page 7, 2401-8002. Just to go back to Deputy Mayor's question earlier about the 2.4 million being transferred all within the Administration and Finance Department. This transfer to reserve that you see of 84,000 is specific for the building department to make it cost recovery.
Member, Councillor McClinchy, and then Councillor Nickel.
Okay, under the 2401-4012, professional legal, the actual was 2814 in 21. It's now proposed 10,000.
Jonathan, that's for legal expenses within the building permit department. It's on page 7.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't
That's
say that.
okay.
No. On the wrong page, so.
You need a minute, Jonathan?
Okay, it's 20, it was this one, 2401-4412. It went from 2814 and 21
Yeah.
to 10,000.
Through your
Proposed.
worship, that's, in any case, we could have legal issues that we need to address. And there is a possible one that the municipality is aware of, so we were just putting funds associated with that in the bank.
And okay, the next one, like 400 or 4016 to professional services, 56,987 to 125,000.
So that is in correlation to the contracted service that we have with Middlesex Center.
Okay,
We went midstream last year.
Yeah.
So that's why there's such a different increase that you're seeing proposed for this year.
all right.
Okay. Councillor Nickel, and then Councillor Moyer.
It's been answered. Thank you.
That's your question? Okay, Councillor Moyer?
This might be a question more for the budget committee, but the building permits with the activity that's been this year and what's anticipated for next year, see that you're actually budgeting less coming in for building permits. Actual is 274, 392, and then budgeting 220 for, that's on page 6.
Through your worship, it's actually page 7, the professional services, that the 120 no.
He's inquiring about the building permits revenue.
Oh, my apologies.
So the 274,000 actuals in 2021, and the budgeted amount is only 220, and I believe that's in regards to Craigwell.
That is,
Yes.
so that's because we've saw such a large increase with one building permit. We had to account for that, so that's where it's been put in, and I believe that came in October, which would represent why you're seeing it now, because this has been November.
Thank you. I was trying to remember too why that one was high, but that was a conversation that we did have. You have more questions on protective services? Councillor McClinchy?
On 2403, page 8, 2403, 404, the animal control contract. The actual was 562, so it went to $1,000. Is it a new contract that we have with animal control?
What was that for? Sorry, I
I'm
missed.
sorry, it's for 2403 on page 8, 404, animal control contract. The actual in 2021 was 562. Now it is proposed 1,000 for 2022.
Jackie will take
Jackie,
that
do you have
one.
So through your worship, as council will recall, so we entered into a new pilot project contract with Cozy Country Kennel to take over from Lobo Animal Shelter. And there was negotiations as part of that contract, and that's accounted for within the budget.
Thank you.
And if I remember right, Jackie, that number did go up and down using the last service, just depending on how much we used it that year.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Are we ready to move on to the next? Okay,
So we'll move on to operations, drains and waste, the purple tab in your binder. So this does, I'm sorry, this does include operations. And if you just, the operations department is a total of 21 pages. And then you have your waste and cemeteries, and this is where you will find the additional revenue for the bins.
Councilor Moyer.
I just have a question on the lead hand and the moving up. How are we handling that situation now? That if we don't have a lead hand, have an operator's one? Why do you think we need to add that extra level?
Through the mayor and council more. Basically, we did a list of all the surrounding municipalities and all their collective agreements and all their staff and complements, and found like every one of them had a lead hand. In addition, we've got 8, 9, 10, depending on time of year operators. It's pretty common that you see from a health and safety standpoint, as well as just organization hierarchy, that you start to divide and put people in place like a lead hand. It is a promotion. The intention is that it's a promotion from within, and just basically recognizing what some of our workers have been doing in the interim while that's been coming on. So lead hand is a very common position, very common, utilized basically by all of our neighbors, and we're looking to.
Okay, I guess my question would be, do we need it? I understand if our neighbors have it, we've been operating without it. Is it something that needs to be implemented, or are we just creating more levels?
If I could, looking at everything within Middlesex. With everything in Middlesex County, we actually have the largest geographical area of any municipality in the county. And with that, we're the only municipality that doesn't recognize lead hand position. Basically, if I'm over on the east side, it will take quite a long time for me to get to the west side if we have multiple projects on the go. That assists me in doing my job so that I've got a second set of eyes out in the field to answer any questions that the crews may have. It's ongoing as we are doing it presently. It's just he's not getting recognized for it. So we wanted to come up to par with all our adjoining municipalities and recognize this individual.
Okay, I guess, so we've been operating more efficiently than other municipalities, I'd say.
Through the mayor, not necessarily. Communication was something that we noticed right away that was not the best. When one person speaks to one individual, gives them orders to do a daily job, and then those do not communicate through, up and down and sideways. Everybody's basically out on an island doing whatever they do. There's no cohesiveness, there's no organization, there's no hierarchy. Basically, it allows the department, for what it's worth, to have not necessarily a chain of command, but a direct correlation on how communication works. It's not a hire or fire position. It's not an enforcement position, more of a working position in charge of projects and groups as we go through our day.
How many guys on the operations right now do we have?
We've got 9 regulars. During winter, we have 3 seasonal.
So in the summer, we're looking at 9. And then with vacation time and all that, and we're the 9 guys, 2 supervisors for 9 guys is what we'll be looking at.
A manager and then a lead.
And on a health and through your worship, then on a health and safety standpoint, going by Ontario regulations, any crews 5 or more required to have in-field supervisory over and above. So by us creating this lead hand position, we're actually complying with Ontario health and safety regulations.
Okay. Okay, Deputy Mayor Nelson.
Just to follow up on that question and the Councillor Moore's position, I guess the thing I'm thinking about as this discussion is going forward is what will you be doing?
I'm still doing managerial duties in the office. I'm out talking to the taxpayers. I'm also doing spot checks on crew, making sure they've got their proper tools to get the job done, and that also they're doing it safely. And I'm pre-planning for the next job. But as I mentioned before, I can't be in every place at the same time. So if I'm planning for the rest of the week, at least I've got a lead hand that's out there answering the questions if I can't get over there right away.
For me, it raises the questions, how did we survive so long without it? And I think relatively well.
Through the mayor to the deputy mayor, it's not looking back and it's not saying that it was a good survival, but it's been noted and it's been brought to our attention, there have been a lot of communication issues.
Okay, give me an example of that, because this is the second time you brought that up, and I'd like to have a better understanding of communication issues, if you don't mind.
So here's a prime example. When you go and send 5 employees to go and rehabilitate a road, and there's not a clear-cut leader of the group, nobody understands, nobody has control over the situation. Somebody needs to have a physical figurehead, be in charge, at least in the organization or on that job, so that everybody knows who delivers the marching orders, who gets the materials, who does this, who does that. It simplifies, it creates hierarchy, and it allows everybody to understand where they're fits.
But historically, isn't that what our road supervisor did? I mean, Brad, and before that, Joe did that. I mean, they were the ones that were there providing that hierarchy, that direction, and working alongside the men to ensure it was done properly. Isn't that what happened then?
Through the mayor, we now have a roads manager, where we prior had a road super or a roads foreman. There's been a lot of things in the roads department that haven't been planned, looked at, or considered. For example, the health and safety manual. The list goes on and on. Ed is taking advantage, as well as I am, on future planning. Looking at bridge rehabilitation. I don't think we've maintained a bridge or done anything to a bridge in the 5 years that I've been here, and I don't know before that.
Poplar Hill Bridge.
Yes, Poplar Hill, which I was the project leader. Right. What we have now is a manager, and we need a lead hand to be out in the field. We've never had a manager at North Middlesex. I shouldn't say never. In recent history, we haven't had a manager in that form. That's been out with the guys doing that. But there's a whole level of work that's being missed: planning, health and safety, asset management, organization, financial reporting. That's what Ed is doing, and the lead hand is more hands-on out in the field working with the crews. So to look at any other industries, to look outside of government, and they're always one, they're always leading. It's nothing new. It's just we haven't been able to.
Well, you have to admit, we are not a large municipality. It's a relatively small rural municipality with very small population, right? And what we're asking here is we're asking the taxpayers to fund this position, again, which is debatable if we actually need it.
Small population, massive infrastructure, logistically large. Those two things don't always equate in the municipal world.
I think we're at opposite ends here, but anyway, thank you for your answer.
Just a comment I'll make before I go to the questions is when Joe Adams was here, and it's not about anybody, but he had 2 foremen working for him. He did have Brad and Glenn. He had 2 foremen. And then when Joe left, it was changed, right? Glenn went into the water and so we did change that. That was some of us that were on council at the time. But I just wanted, Joe did have 2 foremen for him. Yes, yeah, I'm just saying, I'm just making that comment, but he did have a foreman with him as well. Counselor Moyer, you had your hand up, and then Counselor McClinchy did as well.
So this lead hand, just be sure, this would be a working lead hand. This is another manager that would be driving around checking on the crews. He would be assigned a crew and a job, and they'd go, and he'd be there working with the crews to those jobs are completed.
Through the mayor, that's
Okay, getting back to the lead hand. Is what's wrong with the employees we have today that's working for the municipality, that's aware of the municipality? Why wouldn't one of them be the lead hand? Or are they not qualified? Meanwhile, you're going to bring someone else new into the municipality that doesn't know anything about the municipality.
through the mayor, the intention is to hire.
Pardon me?
The intention is to promote.
That wasn't stated at the beginning, though.
When Estelle did the presentation, it was to take an operator one, which is a current position that we have, and to move them into a lead hand position.
There would not be a new hire in this at all. It would just be one person that's going to be elevated to a lead hand position.
Okay,
And they will still be an operator, but they will be a lead hand as well. That's the proposal. Okay,
okay, thank you.
Counselor Keough.
Thank you, Mayor Rob. Jonathan, the lead hand position, his operating duties would be reduced doing more lead hand type work. Is that correct?
To an extent, depending on the date, depending on what the duty is, possibly, yes.
So are we opening up a position for another operator?
We haven't contemplated opening up a position.
You have not? Okay. Thank you.
Other questions? On this whole department, not just on the lead hand. Any other questions? Seeing that I have one, and that is on the waste bins. Right. My personal preference is that we don't change the waste bin the way it's doing. I don't think it's broke in that system, but we have some increases for residents here this year as well. Other than this, and I think maybe I'd like to personally would like to see the waste bins maintained the way they have been. That's. Go ahead. There wasn't really a question of what I said. I was just making a comment.
Well, thank you, Mayor Ruff, because that was exactly my point as well, because when I look at the scale compared to what our neighboring municipalities pay for waste management, it's significantly higher. You know, and we're looking for growth here and affordable living. But with the cost increases that are being proposed, how could people sustain those costs with the waste management? Like, I think we're almost $200 higher than the next municipality. And so my question is, how can Strathroy Caradoc, which is bigger, uses the same service, be so much less than what we're proposing?
Through the mayor, I mean, you could tip that thing, you could throw it down to 250 square kilometers. The lion's share of waste management truck. There are a lot of ways truck. Yeah, they drive, within the 600 square municipality versus 250 square kilometers. Fuel costs, truck costs, labor, it's all.
Do they use blue water? Okay, I just wanted to double check that.
But they also have more waste than we do, significantly more. A larger population, need a lot more waste.
But that is the contract for whatever reason. That's the contract that got negotiated. I'm not sure what year that would have been, but my comment was just, so are you just saying that you're agreeing with me not to change the way we're doing the billing on the waste bins?
Yes.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry to answer Deputy Mayor's question in regards to neighboring municipalities. In the original budget preparation presentation on January 19th, I did have a comparing table for neighboring municipalities. And our proposed rate, and I'm just going to talk about the small bin, or I can refer to the other ones as well if you want. Our proposal is 185 for the small. Strathroy Caradoc is 125. Middlesex Center is 120, and Lucan Biddulph is 165.
Exactly my point. We're significantly higher than anybody else.
They are all lower than we are, yes.
Yes.
Just giving you the details.
I'm sorry?
Maybe that's some, in the future, we can have Blue Water Recycling come as a delegation and we can ask them. Or staff can at least approach Blue Water Recycling and see about our contract compared to others. I know that isn't on the conversation tonight, but it's something that we could do off of this. Deputy Mayor Knelson,
Yes,
and then Councillor McClinchy.
I'm still on works. And I guess I'm looking for the shouldering program. And I don't know if it's caused and then here, whether it be in capital projects, I'm not sure. But I am curious as to what shouldering program you have in mind for this year, which roads and to what extent? If Ed could answer that.
We basically, when it comes to operation costs of the budget, we carry it over to some sheet. There's minor differences, but for the most part, we put it over. And we're using it as a basis here to establish where the money goes, how it's allocated. Is it properly allocated? Can we get at certain things? It's gonna be very much a baseline, which is why you're not seeing a lot of in the roads.
Okay. Ed, which roads do you propose to shoulder this year?
With the crew out there, the senior members, and going over, I started in November, so I get familiar with all the roads and evaluating each of them. And as a crew, we're look at previous years and where we need to concentrate our efforts this year. So now that's
So there's no decision made, no proposals. Okay.
Councillor McClinchy, you had your hand up.
We were talking about like Blue Water Recycling, the bins.
Yeah.
Right now it is a user fee, is it not? Am I correct? We get it, it's on the, oh no. It's an additional thing on our taxes, right?
Through your mayor, through your worship, yes, it is.
Yeah, okay. And is that half of it or was that the whole thing for the cost?
In
can't-
2021, for a small bin, the cost was $95. And this budget proposes doubling the small bin fee to $185.
Yeah, okay, right. But that is extra cost, yeah, again.
Yeah. Councillor Keo.
Thank you, Mayor Rob. Yes, I think we certainly should get Blue Water Recycling on board because there is an awful lot of paying commodities that are dumped in the recycling portion that could offset some of this cost. It should not be all revenue generating for Blue Water without being some cost alleviation to us as well. We are the ones that are supplying them.
Okay. Other questions on operations? Okay, yeah, no, that's fine. I'm just,
Through your worship, Estelle, would you mind if the allocation of the bins goes back to taxation? What impact does that have, if any? Because it's one would argue that it needs to be properly allocated from a different side. So if it goes back to taxes, can this be complemented through reserves or would the tax base have to go up as proposed?
Through your worship, this is what revenue is not collected through the small bins, medium bins, and large bins. The difference is supplemented by the tax levy.
and just a comment to that, when we started the bins, we were told that would be it would be going on the tax levy. That's what was relayed to us at that time. Yes, and both bins, they go on the tax levy.
The bins were always a recovery though, just because that took the place of the bag tag system.
Yep.
So it was always meant to have the revenue coming in as if the bag tag program was there. But recycling was always carried, expense was always carried through the taxation.
Right,
Yeah.
but through the taxation, that's what I'm saying.
Yes,
So,
yeah.
and it's not an extra charge. That's what.
Question.
Deputy Mayor.
Under waste recycling on page 2, contractor services, 45014005. And I see it's been a consistent amount of around 31 to 35,000. But what are those contractor services if we're paying Blue Water? Page 2
Of waste.
of waste
cemeteries.
recycling. And maybe it's under cemeteries, I'm not sure. It says cemeteries as well.
Probably a lot to get rid of the brush and dumped off.
Contracted services at 35,000?
Yes, yes.
That's correct. That would be the tipping fees associated with our transfer station.
I'm sorry?
That would be the tipping fees associated with our transfer station.
The expense to get rid of the materials that come through.
Okay. That's our cost of running the transfer station, nothing to do with the bins.
Okay,
Okay.
all right, okay. Okay. Landfill.
Councillor Moyer.
On jumping up to page 8, gravel and grading. 31101010. It's in the proposed budget, salary up to 89,000. The actual in 2021 was 37,800. I'm thinking we want to maintain their gravel roads the same level. Just wondering why such a jump. Page 8.
Through your worship, in regards to the salaries and wages for the entire operations department, there has been a reallocation of funds based on expenses in previous years. So I did an average of the 5 previous years to allocate to the different departments within the operations.
Thank you.
Okay, Gord? This is a large budget. Operations is a large budget and absolutely we want to. Councillor Hemming.
Through you, Mayor. So when we see these increases here in the salaries and wages, that include the COLA, cost of living increase?
Through your worship, yes, it does.
Okay.
And we are going through, there will be contract negotiations this year as well. This is the best that can, for figuring that out, the estimate.
Correct.
Maybe we should have some background music or something, should we? Or somebody hum? I don't know. No, I don't wish. But no, I do want to, I know sometimes we've thought we've been rushed through it. And I want to be efficient, but I want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to. Councillor Moyer.
Page 13. Building repairs and maintenance, 31313016. Is that mostly repairs to the Creamy Road?
Yep.
Through the mayor, in previous years, there was an allocation made for 60,000 to actually give them a concrete working surface that's at the front of the base so that they can work on the equipment or wash the equipment, keep them out of the mud, and it's never been done. So this year we actually reallocated that 60,000 so that we could actually get that built this year, so that we have a new working area to work.
Did we not get a grant to rehabilitate that garage?
Through the mayor, yeah, that's a completely different thing. That'll be an internal renovation, which is still ongoing. The planning phase, this is over and above. This is an exterior thing for where
Okay.
Which,
Councilor McLean.
which garage are we talking about for that? McGilvery. Okay, thank you.
Councilor Moyer.
Again, this is sort of a general question. It might be for Jonathan or one of the Jonathans. The equipment maintenance. Page 15, the whole page actually. I know we've always gone on, this one do maybe speak to the purchases as well, I know you've always gone under the 50% rule, is what we also told. And I know Councillor Keel has mentioned this a couple times as well, that maintenance should be broken up. Regular maintenance, oil changes, tires, changing hoses, that shouldn't be really counted in the 50% rule. I mean, it should be large catastrophic mechanical failures that are charged for 50%. So I'm just.
Through your worship,
That program needs to change.
we do eliminate oil changes, tires, and general maintenance when we do the 50% rule. The only time that we didn't was we didn't do a purchase, but I gave you a report for the entire fleet last year. And just because of allocation of time, I didn't have time to go through and swap out all that. But we are looking to make that program a little bit more robust under Ed. And that's one of the initiatives that he'll be working on in the next little bit.
Okay, and whether more regular maintenance on it, maybe we can extend the life of our equipment. I know we bought that ACO, had 5,000 hours on it, and you were saying that was pretty well finished. People in the private sector will tell you that's barely broke in. So I think we should be able to get a little bit longer life out of our equipment.
Through the mayor, to answer your question, that is one of the things that I'm presently working at. I've been talking to a lot of the dealerships, the mechanics that have serviced our equipment, and building a preventative maintenance plan for each type of equipment that we have out there, which will actually refine these cost codes to a lot more detail so that we can have a better track and keep a better eye on these pieces of equipment, what needs to be done at certain increments, kilometers or hours.
Yeah, because
Through the further to that, and some more, our asset management that we work, we go through our O&Ms. You go to the McGilvery shop right now, you see basically every O&M manual that we have for every piece of machinery strung out. And we start putting in to auto-generate work orders for oil changes, for hoses, and for stuff like that. So automatically get a push. And that's all back to the asset management. But it will start to work and we'll start to see better preventative maintenance.
which in turn should get longer life out of our
We talked about that a while ago. We talked about if we could get 1 more year, or 2 more years out of a truck, over the course of 5 years, that is 1 truck, right? Like it's just a couple of years makes a big difference, especially at the cost of these trucks and its equipment now. It is big money.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Nelson.
Thank you. I'm on page 20, sidewalks, snowplow and sand. And I'm just curious, I'm not seeing anything for sidewalk repair, sidewalk replacement. Is that located somewhere else or is it just not a budget item this year?
It is. I did see it somewhere. I'm sure. I
That's
thought,
on page 10. too.
yeah.
Page 10?
Page 10.
And through the mayor, the deputy mayor.
There it is. I see it now.
It's probably just a carryover number.
Did you get it, Adrian?
I see it now.
Okay.
Is $2,500 sufficient for the sidewalk repairs that need to be done?
Through the mayor, the deputy mayor, we're setting a baseline.
I'm sorry?
We're setting a baseline. Basically, we've carried our 3-year trend over. You can see we're basically in the middle of those 3 years prior. And that's what we carry. Yet to be determined.
Okay.
It could be much more, it could be in line, but until we start rolling out these programs and start looking at it with and looking at these things and start strategically planning forward. You know,
So you're hoping that like next year when you come in, you'll have more actuals to have a little better basis to, or, okay. Yep. So, listen, after we're done operations, does anybody need just a couple minute break? I think we'll finish operations, then we'll take a break for a couple minutes, all right? But we'll finish this department first. Well, I think when we come off a break, we'll talk about that as to, as to what all we want to get accomplished tonight and or whether you just want to do it all tonight or tomorrow. Like we'll come off a break and we'll talk about that. At the pace we're going, I'm guessing it isn't going to be all tonight. Councillor McClinchy.
On page 18, it's under sanding and salting. I guess it's, let me see, the budget for 2021, there was none, but the actual, does that make sense? 27,008, oh, sorry. Materials purchased, 3302, 3041, page 18. I'm just looking at the actual for 2021 was $27,084, and then 45,000 proposed for this year. Was that because they don't have, you had enough, it was down in stock, or you don't buy it every year or whatever?
through the mayor to Councilor McClinchy, it's close to the 2019 actual is what we carried, because there wasn't a great indicator there, so we basically tied it back to the actual in 2019.
Okay, thank you. I kind of thought that. I thought I'd ask you.
It's another one of those instances where you're going trying to get a number from pre-COVID, right? To get okay. Other questions on operations? Councillor Moyer.
I guess, just on the waste, on the page 2, the contractor services again. Do we, any of the landscape material that comes in, do we chip any of it and offer that to the residents for free, or is that all hauled away? And I know we were hauling it away, it was going someplace else, and it was
Through your worship, it has to be hauled away. The ECA, under the environmental compliance approval form that we have, we can't process any waste, organic waste. Process means it can be compacted, but it needs to go back. We can't have it go back out to the general public.
so we couldn't chip any of that.
No, we can't. That changes the terms of our landfill and would require us to do a site plan agreement with them again.
Do we have another location for that?
I don't know the answer to that question. I would imagine that would be considered processing it. And I think I know what you're getting at. The issue with the transfer station, and this predates me, was the former landfill that it was, and the application of what we were doing or proposing to do with the transfer station. If it's at a different location, I think we would have to go through a very similar process to get the approval for it, but it would be a rather clean site. Instead, it wouldn't be an old landfill, so there might be latitude that way, but that would be, a couple of years to go through the Ministry of Environment to get to that.
Flow it across the creek into that other property.
Well, I was thinking where Mr. Sadler had his recycling or his compost yard, that belongs to municipality, if I remember correctly. And it's not being used at all right now.
The one, sorry,
At the curve in Victoria Street,
On Victoria.
on the way out, just before the landfill.
well, that's a transfer station. It's the same property. It's under the same ECA.
But Mr. Sadler was able to do it.
There was issues with compliance. That's why they came in and did the inspection. That's why the municipality was triggered to go through site plan again. And that's where we ultimately find ourselves
Okay.
with the limitations that we have today.
Thank you.
Counselor Moyer.
If, as long as the biggest, it would be, the biggest component to that is the licensing, to be completely honest, because you have to demonstrate your due diligence, not even on top of the landfill, what you're gonna do. We would have to knowingly engage an individual who has a proper licensing to do that. But certainly it's something that we can consider if we get to that point.
Other questions on operations? Seeing none right now, let's take a 5-minute break. Okay, Estelle, go ahead.
Through your worship, before we go on break, staff would like direction from council in regards to both the lead hand position and what we are doing for the waste bins.
Okay, so you want to do that as we go through each one?
Yes, please.
Sorry. Okay, so, because they are a couple of expenditures, and we do want to have, tonight we want to come up with direction on things as we go, and I didn't know if we were coming back to it or as we go, but, so it is on the waste bins, whether we change it or leave it the way it is. There is a proposal to change it, and there is a proposal for the lead hand, and we don't have to make a motion. We just, right? We don't really have to have a motion. It's just a show of hands. I think it's just a show of hands, right? Is there any questions before we do that? Did you have a question? It doesn't have to be a motion because the motion will come when we approve the budget, or, when the budget's approved, when we decide. So the first one would be on the lead hand. In favor of the lead hand. No?
Just to clarify, that's an increase of about
$10,000.
10,000.
If I may, your worship,
Yep.
I know it's tricky to balance HR in the context of what we're talking about in budget, but I can't reaffirm enough that this was actually kind of happening in previous years, not maybe as fluidly as what's been suggested today as a lead hand, but we've had operators step up in this regard, and we're just trying to fill the gap and recognizing the hierarchy that we should have in place. So I think it's important to recognize that this has been going on, and we were trying to correct the responsibilities and roles that some of our senior staff have been taking on.
And
From
if
a-
I may add,
Yes.
this would represent, as Councillor Moyer indicated, an increase to the budget of $10,525.
The as it was mentioned, it is giving recognition for what someone has been doing. I do believe that staff wants this. That's my interpretation of it. And if everybody doesn't have to agree with that, but that's my interpretation, that staff wants this. I'm not sure that it won't be a negative impact if we don't do it, but again, we're making that decision here at council.
I think as long as it's coming from within. And
It's from what, okay, yep,
And that person is, we want to pay people for the job they're doing and what they're worth. I mean, I think
Right.
that's only fair. But yeah, I don't want to make sure that we're not grading another position, that it is from within.
and I think that's a very fair point to that we are approving moving to a lead hand, but not creating a new, with the understanding, we're not creating a new position.
I guess my question would be that if someone moves up to lead hand, does that be replaced? Would you bring someone else in at a lower level to replace what he's doing? Through there, no.
It is a working position. There's just added duties to his job, whether it be that we have, for example, 3 o'clock daily meetings to debrief, pre-plan the next days going forward. So it's just a few things added to his role, but it is a working position. So he would still be maintaining what he's regularly doing in the field.
And then the $10,500 here that he pushed to $5 an hour increase, correct?
Hold that up.
About 5 bucks, give or take.
It
Give or take.
is.
$2,000.
Yep.
So is that for everything? Is that set in stone or is that negotiable? Is that something you're working?
We come to agreements through a letter of understanding to know that that will be the rate through QD, but it will be looked at again.
Not with the employee, but with the union. Okay. Okay.
And that's going to build that back into that cost. So we need that, which is where that comes from. But that's burden overhead, everything on top of these stuff. Well, the owners and everything else get top.
No, that's the increase, that's part of it.
Is the difference between salary, including the salary and all benefits.
Counselor McClinchy.
Okay, who's going to determine the lead hand? Who's going to be in those?
Through the merit, it'll be a specific.
Yeah, okay, what impact will that be on the rest of them if some feel that they're just as qualified?
So through the mayor, it will be open posted throughout the entire department. So anybody that wants to apply can apply. And then it'll be a decision of their manager as to who gets the position. It's open to everybody in there.
Okay, so they all have that opportunity. If we present them saying, okay, there's 6 guys here, who is willing to step up as the lead hand? Is that?
As a union position, it has to be posted.
Yeah.
It does have to be
Yeah,
posted
within-
appropriately.
Thank you.
Counselor Hemming and then
Yeah,
Counselor
that was
Keel.
my question.
Okay.
I don't want to create animosity amongst the workers, right? So as long as you're
Yeah.
stepping up to decide. who-
Just
I imagine you just take the one that's most qualified. Okay.
Counselor Keel and then Jonathan.
Thank you, Mayor Rupp. In our previous operations staffing, our operations manager, I guess was his title. He could operate a truck, he could operate a backhoe, run any piece of equipment. I guess my question is, do you have those qualifications, Ed?
I'm not a machine operator, sorry, through the mayor. What I'm coming on board to do is to manage the crews, make sure they have the proper tools to get their job done and work with the budget at hand, implement standard.
Through your worship,
operations.
sorry. This is more of an HR role in terms of an individual specific person. And I know we're having an open and candid conversation, but we just want to be mindful what's appropriate in terms of
No,
the time.
and I understand that. I guess what I'm trying to, in order to make my mind up, is if we are putting in a lead hand position, but we're losing an operator, in the event we need an operator, we also have a $10,000 increase for a lead hand position. Now we're also hiring another operator.
We're not hiring another operator. It kind of back to the point before is that there is some gaps in the operations department that we need to clean up in terms of gravel programs, equipment maintenance, a lot of these things that are coming through that are appropriate as a manager on site in the facility itself. We need an individual like Ed there to be able to do that. And that's where the focus and the primary task will be, in addition to scoping out what we do in a given week. What we kind of lost in terms of what was done before and where we are now, we would react in the operations department. We are trying to get away from reacting and we're trying to be proactive. And in order to do that, we need to have the proper complement of staff there. And I feel confident in Ed's ability to do that. So it will be baseline this year and we will be able to report back again in budget or through the cycle of the conversation through the given year. But we need to be able to have the right staff in the right place and being able to do what we do. And we have a big geographical area like has been discussed before. So I hope it doesn't muddy the water and
Well, I just want to make a comment here that we want to make sure our questions are towards this position and not delving too much into HR because then it would be a closed, we don't want to get into discussing it open, what should end up being a closed conversation. And so that's just, but go ahead, Councilor Keo, are you?
Well, no, the point I was just trying to make was we have 2 gentlemen in pickup trucks. We're still down 1 operator.
it's to pick up truck occasion. It's the responsibility of being on a project with more than four or five individuals. And I would even argue, although it's a standard, demonstrators, you have two or three up there needs to be a hierarchy of somebody who knows what's going on. Because there's responsibilities of someone from the general public that comes out and starts behind somebody. We want to be able to react quickly. So in terms of losing an individual, it's not losing an individual in its entirety, it's just complementing and expanding your scope of responsibilities. And like I said, it is recognizing of people who have been doing this on our behalf for quite some time that we haven't recognized. So we're trying to respect that course and that culture. So in recognizing that we can, we're also incentivizing the operations group to have more of a structure and daily tasks of being able to meet what he sets out every week. So again, I hope that doesn't muddy the water, but I think very much needed.
And I'd just like to also mention, I wasn't making it personal or anything like that. I just, so that we can all make informed decisions.
Right.
Nothing, I don't take anything personal.
No, but I mean, for
So let me rephrase then, the lead hand with the understanding that there is no new hire involved to that. I think that would be would council be more comfortable with that direction that, to promote a lead hand with the understanding there is not a new hire. Deputy Mayor.
I think, I'm not necessarily opposed to it, but I'm feeling it's a little bit premature. I think for some reason, I'm feeling it's a little bit premature that we're changing things quickly that I'm not so sure is justified or warranted at this time. And I think I would need more time to process this, to evaluate, see how things are progressing. That's kind of how I'm feeling about it. I don't know where the rest of council is, but that's where I'm at.
Okay. Well, we have to give direction here tonight, so one way or another. Right, this is the proposal that's come out. And so I guess we're looking who's in favor of this position. And again, I would add that there's, with the understanding there isn't a new hire. Okay, so who would be in favor? 5 in favor, 2 opposed, 2 opposed. Okay, so that carries. The other question we talked about was the waste bins.
Correct, your worship. Increasing the fees for the small, medium, and large bins from 95 to 185. Wait, it's in my presentation. Where is it? I do have it here somewhere.
And I want to say that I'm glad we're having these conversations. I mean, last year we went through the budget process and there wasn't much communication. It was on Zoom. It was very hard to do. And we didn't have these conversations, and we need to have them because this is our opportunity. Not when there's an RFP goes out for a tender, this is our opportunity. So I'm glad that we're having these conversations. Go ahead, Estelle.
Okay, so for the increase for the small bin, it would go from $95 to $185. For the medium bin, it will go from $150 to $294. And for the large bin, it would go from $210 to $411.
Go ahead.
So my understanding is that the rationale for the increase is because the recycling bins were never charged. So the amounts that you're quoting there, does that include the recycling? The
Yes,
blue
it-
bins?
Through your worship, yes, it does.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Councillor Hemming.
So if you look on the next page there where it says Lucan Gulf 92 and 73, I'm assuming 73 was the cost of the bins.
Correct. They have 2 charges. They have separate charges for garbage and recycling. The 73 is for garbage, so that's the same all around. And the other quoted is for the recycling.
Other questions on this? Councilor
Just a
McClinchy.
comment. I believe that the ratepayers are really getting charged more than they really need to. I'd like to stay with the present rate.
Okay, so is there other questions or comments on it? So I will ask who's in favor of the increase of the recommended increase? In favor? Opposed to it? Yeah, so that's voted to go to
Thank you,
stay the
Worship.
same. Thank you. So we're going to take a 5-minute break if we can go offline here for 5 minutes.